I'm Jane Alexander, Nantucket Book Festival alumna, welcoming you to At Home with Authors.
On this episode of At Home with Authors, Nancy Thayer, captured here in London in 1981, promoting her successful debut novel, Stepping. 39 years and more than 30 novels later, Nancy Thayer joins us to talk about romance in the midst of complicated family dynamics. And we get a surprise visit, totally unplanned, from Nancy's daughter, the novelist, pastor, and yoga teacher, Samantha Wilde, who shares her behind-the-scenes insights into her mother's work and worldview. Nancy Thayer, welcome to At Home with Authors.
Thank you, Michael.
And, so I feel like this is all, I'm getting you in a kind of breaking news field because my sense is you just finished your morning writing routine.
You're right. I did. Absolutely right.
And so tell me, first of all, before we get into what we hope is going to be for me and our listeners and viewers, a masterclass in romance writing from an authority. Did you have a successful morning writing, and how do you even judge whether the morning is successful?
I did have a successful morning. I always set myself a goal of 5 pages, and I got 5 pages done, and I'm far enough into the novel that I know what I want to happen. I'm not searching for which way the characters or the plot is going to go.
I had never read a romance book or a beach book, and I know you sort of skirt between those two categories. So First tell me your category and tell me your sort of creation story so we have a better sense of who you are.
Thank you. I love to tell this story, especially if there are other women out there. I wrote my first novel, or I had my first novel published in 1980 by Doubleday, and it did very, very well. And it was called Stepping. It was about being a stepmother who also had 2 little children and who was living in Helsinki with her Fulbright professor, horrible husband. And it did really, really well. And it got a review in the New York Times Book Review. It got a good review in the New York Times Book Review. My face was in the New York Times Book Review. And at that time, I was living in Williamstown, Massachusetts, which is a college town. And so people were confused because how could I be in the New York Times Book Review when this book is about a woman and her stepchildren who she might or might not like, and her own children who were exhausting because they were so little. And nobody knew what to do with me. I had a wonderful, respectable agent named Julian Bach who said to me, we're not sure what to do with you. You are right on the line between literary and commercial. And by the time the book was published, I was divorced. I had 2 little children, and I kind of wanted to go commercial because I was supporting myself. So I wrote other books. I wrote a book called Bodies and Souls, which was my 3rd novel. And it had a lot of characters in it who hadn't been written about before in what is called mainstream fiction. When I graduated from the University of Missouri at Kansas City with a bachelor's and master's in English literature, I hadn't had to read one woman writer. I didn't have to read Virginia Woolf, Willa Cather, Elizabeth Bishop. I didn't read any women. And I was so tired of war and bulls being gored and men dying and men being the heroes But I also didn't want to write romance. What I wanted to write was about families, plain, just ordinary families with friends, because as I have come to know more and more, being part of a family can often be as hard as crawling on your belly with a machine gun in your hand. And if you're a mother with a sick child, you don't get to get it over with in a couple of days. You might live the rest of your life taking care of a child, taking care of a husband, having someone take care of you. In all of my books, I have tried to include romance, which is to me simply love. Love between two people who decide they want to be together. When I wrote Stepping, this was before Oprah Winfrey, and it was even before Phil Donahue. And I had so much recognition. Redbook condensed the novel. It sold overseas like crazy. I had a nice movie option on it. And I got so many letters, because this was back in the time when people wrote letters. We didn't have our computers yet. So many women wrote and said, I really don't like my stepson, but I love my stepdaughter, and thank you for letting me know someone else out there feels this way. In Bodies and Souls, and I'm very proud of this, which was published in '83, I have a number of characters, and one of the plots is that a woman who's married falls in love with another woman. And I called my lawyer in Williamstown and said, okay, person A is in love with person B, but she's married to person C, the man. Can she, if she gets divorced and lives with the woman, what will happen to her? And the lawyer said, she will get crushed. She won't get the house. She won't get custody of her children. She won't even get part custody of her children. This is not done. But I wrote it anyway. That was not the only plot of the novel in Bodies and Souls, but it was published in 1983. Since then, I've written 33 novels, and some of them have been very difficult. I've written about a family with a bipolar son, and there is bipolar in my family, but we're all doing just fine. I've written about other sorts of problems, but I don't write. I'm not lecturing. I'm not a nonfiction writer. I'm not saying, okay, here's why we should all be happy about having a mental illness. I try to include it as part of a normal family, as part of normal family life, because it is part of normal family life. And I have a lot of readers in the Midwest who don't want me to include any sex in the book. And I have a lot of readers who read my books because they have happy endings. And I know that I've opened a little window in the world for them and made certain things acceptable. So that's my speech.
Well, which leads to about 100 questions. So, the first thing that occurs to me is those first letters you got from women on the stepchildren. What was that about? It's about a sense of connection, right? It's like, oh, these people who think they're isolated, they're suffering through this alone. they're not. And then you mentioned bipolar, and then you mentioned, a woman falling in love with another woman. And these are all people who might in the culture feel isolated until they read a book like yours, which shows them they're not alone, which then maybe, coming back to romance, opens the window, as you say, for a little more romance because, well, you know what, maybe this is just part of the landscape and we accept it and then we move forward.
Yes.
Did I get it?
You got it. You got it. Absolutely.
So it's interesting. So, you talk about happy endings in very often difficult circumstances, challenging circumstances. I've never heard anybody sort of put the difficulties and challenges of having a thriving, healthy family side by side with war. But as we think about it, you're absolutely right. And it can last a lifetime. So we need your imagination right now to maybe not for romance, but maybe to imagine a happy ending in this time we're living in. Have you given that much thought? And how do you envision happy endings? How do they come to you?
Well, for our particular problem now with COVID-19, it's very hard to imagine a happy ending. And I won't write about this because it's such a complicated problem and it's mixed in with other very complicated problems. What I do for many of my books is talk to my children. And I've used them in my books. I've used them when they were little and they were adolescents and they had their hormones going crazy. And about COVID-19, I talked to my son, whose partner is a biohazard safety expert. And he's head of the biohazard safety union or group or whatever. And Josh, my son, is in computers. They live in Arizona. They're very green. They're very vegetarian. And when I talked to Josh, my son, he said, it might turn out that the world is a little bit better because of this. It might turn out that we realize we don't have to have all this stuff we have. We don't have to eat all the meat we eat. We don't have to hate anybody who isn't like us. And he is very optimistic, which is unusual for Josh because he's very smart and very usually sarcastic. So he gives me hope, and my daughter gives me hope because she just had her 5th baby, and she's an interfaith minister. She went to Yale Divinity School, but it was too Episcopalian for her. So after she got her master's, she went to New York to the New Seminary, and talk about romance. The first wedding she officiated was here in Nantucket Harbor on a sailboat between a woman who thinks she's Jewish and divorced and a man who is Catholic and divorced. And this is the coolest thing, which ties in with Girls of Summer. Wendy is about 13 years older than her husband, and they've been in love for a long time, and they've been married for at least 20 more years. And how can I not be optimistic when my daughter created this beautiful ceremony, and she continues to do this. She'll marry 2 women, 2 men, a Buddhist to an atheist, because, and I guess we can say romance is involved, but I'd like to say love is involved. So I'm not pessimistic about the ending of this period of time.
So, in terms of this, the happy endings, when I first asked you about happy endings, I actually wasn't even thinking about COVID. I was thinking because you create these families, we are part of this American family, which is right now very dysfunctional.
I'm sorry, I'm going to
No, that's okay. That's okay. Take your time.
get rid of her.
No, just let her know.
There we go.
You know what? By the way, seriously,
Yeah.
I'm already fascinated. Do you want me to send her a link and invite her into this conversation for 5 minutes?
Oh, that didn't work.
Do you want?
She's not. No, she's not desperate. I'll text her,
No,
and then if I text her,
here's a thought, because
yeah.
because of her fascinating background and what you just told me about her. Do you want me to send her a Zoom link right now and put her in this conversation for like 5 minutes?
Sure. Sam, hi, honey.
Hi. Sorry about that, Mom. I thought I was just having technical difficulties. That's why I kept trying to FaceTime you.
I'd like to introduce you to Michael Shoulder, who is a very accomplished interviewer. He worked for CNN, and now he's living on the island. I don't know if he's living here year round.
Not full time, and I'll always be a wash ashore, as they say. But listen, I'm speaking to your mother about 34 novels and counting that she has written, and the history of them. And I'm hoping that by the end of this conversation, I can actually take the lessons she has learned and maybe take a stab at writing a book myself, or maybe a short story. So I want to learn her lessons. And as she was conveying her lessons to me, she couldn't help but mention her 2 accomplished grown children. And then you started trying to FaceTime her. So I thought, okay, we know that you are Reverend Wilde, and we already know that you have 5 children. I don't know if you're looking to get up to like how many. Do you want to be as productive on the child rearing front as your mother has been on writing novels?
Yes. 34 sounds just about right.
And so, but one thing that sounds to me as clear is you really have a sense of optimism about our world. It sounds to me like that is true. And part of that comes from the connections you have with people and what you're able to, how you're able to impact their lives. So tell me, what have you gained from your mother, either watching her write or knowing specifically what she's written about? How has she impacted your view of the world?
As a writer.
Well, as knowing her as a writer specifically, whether it's in her routines of writing or the people she has brought to life in her books. What have you learned from your mother, the novelist?
Okay, Mother the novelist. Well, I think I was in junior high or high school having a tragedy, as you can in junior high or high school. And this is one of the best pieces of wisdom that she gave me. She said, put it in your work. Put it in your work. And she has put everything in her work. So she sort of models that, but it's like whatever sort of family struggle or challenge or thing, it is always useful, which weirdly enough is also a spiritual concept, but she didn't teach it as a spiritual concept, but you can put it in your work. So it's never not useful. It can always be used for the good, and you can sort of transform your experience of it by putting it into your work. So I still remember that. I was probably 8th grade mom or 9th grade or something, and you said, put it in your work. And I think about that all the time. And every time something hard happens, I think, well, this could be used. I could write about it. I could put it into a sermon. So put it in your work. That's a big one. And then her capacity to inhabit the lives of other people is kind of incredible, sort of, because she's an introvert, but her ability to see a situation, that's a baby coughing, watching her, going anywhere, like a restaurant, just going to eat with her or something, she can go into the lives of sort of the woman who's at the table 3 tables over, like, oh, there's the person who would make the good character. She has the capacity to imagine. And I think that is, you know, a piece of a way to be compassionate that's informed my life. Like, it helps me as a minister, because it's really like, if you can get into the lives and the minds of, including the people who would be, quote, your enemies, but if they're your character in your novel, you have to be enough in them to like them enough to write about them.
That's a great insight, Nancy. Is that accurate? You actually have to like them even a little bit in order to put them in your novel?
Because of the kind of novels I write, yes. If I were writing a thriller, if I were writing Silence of the Lambs, I don't know how much, I can't remember his name, the author. I don't know how much the author liked Hannibal. I think he was intrigued. I think he was fascinated. But I don't write thrillers. I haven't even written a mystery yet, because I'm an old-fashioned Agatha Christie kind of mystery reader, where the person who is killed is very old, like 99, and very wealthy, and a lot of people hate him. And so that's why I'm not a mystery writer. I think we all have compassion as writers for our characters. I think we have to understand them, because people aren't like, this one's good and this one's evil. We're a mix. We're all a mix. And I always loved Charles Dickens' work, because he could have really horrible people, but there was always something that made you understand them and feel a little sympathy for them.
So wait a second, I have to pause, because then maybe this is something, Sam Wilde or Samantha? Sam Wilde, this is something that you can address, because right before you got on, we were talking about how your mother writes stories about families, about the trials and tribulations of families, and I sort of raised the idea that, well, with her imagination dealing with family issues, maybe she can help heal the American family. And that's something that you're probably thinking a lot about. And what you just said, Nancy Thayer, is like, well, you know, in order to heal our family, we're going to have empathy and compassion for people who, generally speaking, we might not like or might not agree with on fundamental issues. Sam, do you see that in your work? And do you try to facilitate that in any way, not on a political level, but just on a community level?
I think that's sort of a part and parcel for being a minister, because if you go into a small congregation, and they all are in New England, you're dealing with, 30 or 40 people, and they've been in the same pew forever, and they love each other, and the politics are like, really, you could make a Netflix special. It's a nightmare. Small congregation politics are terrible. So you have to figure out how to love and care for people that way. But I will say about you as a writer, Mom, and as a mother, in terms of like teaching, how do you balance different points of view, I feel like the best thing you've done, and you've modeled it, is that you really just don't even give a lot of attention to the detractors or the haters or I just see you as, talk about optimism, I see you as an extremely optimistic writer. Getting up, your work is always first, you have a lot of discipline, you take a lot of pleasure in it, and just really, it's a way, well, in yoga and mindfulness, it's a way of looking in a certain direction. And I think of you as someone who just most of the time looks in a certain direction. So I'm not particularly, in my capacity in work, a facilitator of high conflict situations like my partner is. He deals with race and social justice all the time. Very different in the local congregations. But in terms of you, Mom, I see that you've done it by just like, when you're down and out, the only way is up. I have all these a little ditties she sang to me as a child, these very Midwestern ditties like that. And the ant that couldn't move the rubber tree plant. and got to accentuate the negative, accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between. And really, I think she kind of lives that, and also in her novels. Like, her novels are optimistic, they're uplifting. I know you could write a novel that was a despairing novel. I'm sure that you're capable of it, but you're ending on the high note, and that's kind of the way that she is. So, even with family conflict, you'll talk to her about family conflict between my brother or myself, and at the end of the conversation, she'll go up. It'll be like, well, we're all going to eat ice cream and we'll feel better tomorrow.
That's always a good remedy for anything. Okay, now no more talking ice cream, right?
So last question for you, Sam, and then I'm going to get back to your mother, and I'll let you get back to it. Do you want to show off is this your fifth?
This is my fifth. I'm actually nursing her right now.
Okay. So we won't invade that privacy. But first of all, have you read Girls of Summer yet or not?
Yeah, that's the latest one. Yes, I have.
Have you read all the books?
I haven't read all the books.
Okay.
No, but I've read many.
So what did you get? Don't review the book. Just, is there something you took out of Girls of Summer that you might in some way has shaped your perspective on life, on relationships? Is there something we should be looking for in that book?
Well, I think
something that just, I think you've really brought your mother actually to life on a level that an individual can't bring it out for herself. I mean, there's no way she could have said the things that you just said about her, right? It would have seemed like it lacked humility, right? Which would have been, but it's fantastic to hear it. So what have you learned? What has struck you about Girls of Summer?
Well, I think what you've done, Mom, is, and I know that this was your intention, and with many of your novels now, is that you're really you're writing to a very wide audience, and in this book, taking that little piece about the bipolar, and it's sort of like a homeopathic remedy. I don't know if you've done homeopathics, but what a homeopathic is, I'm not a proponent of them necessarily. I'm just saying what they are is a little bit of the poison, so to speak, of the disease goes in, and then you shake it up, and it's a resonance. And so the way that she kind of drops in these very serious family issues into sort of the champagne of the novel, which is like, it's a bubbly summer read, is the idea behind homeopathics is that's how you heal. And it's also an idea behind somatic therapy, which is like, you dip into the despair and then back you go. The sky is green, the wall is white, and then back in. And I feel like she really did that with this novel, of like weaving into the bipolar, but then back to the bubble of summer and the joys of Nantucket, and then dipping in again in a way that makes it palatable. And I think ultimately, if we talk about changing the world, and I'm not saying your novel is going to change the world, but that is the way to do it. Like, you never bring anybody over to your side of understanding by coming at them, as I'm sure you know from being a journalist. But that little dip, that little weaving in, sort of stitching in of this very serious family thing, that's what I got from the book, as sort of like a very important piece, but done in a way that even every reader across the U.S., because we're not, these are people all over, all these 40,000 Facebook fans, can really take it in. And I think that's a very powerful thing to do. And it's a sort of a sensitive touch to sort of stay in this beach world, but weave in the really important stuff.
And Nancy, stay on actually, Sam, so just to listen in. But Nancy, when we spoke, I guess it was on the phone or earlier conversation, you talked about how those Midwest roots and knowing, where you came from has helped you shape that approach. What was it about your upbringing that sort of led to that incredible ability? I mean, the metaphors you just used, Sam, the homeopathic metaphors are so fantastic. And I think you both, between the two of you, you've really sort of given us a way to maybe take a step back and then move forward in a more productive way for oh my gosh. What is it? I'm sorry. We have to call it. What is this child's name?
This is Arwen. Arwen. She's Arwen, but we call her Weenie. Say hi.
Little elf.
Because I'm a journalist, and we always want to be able to say, "Oh, we have an exclusive," right? That's a big deal. Is this an exclusive? Has Arwen ever appeared in a major publication or website before?
No, not even Facebook.
So Arwen, one day you're going to watch this interview and the waves of, oh my gosh. Okay.
See, now you see why I get to be hopeful. You can't have a pandemic baby and be a doomer.
Right.
It's not possible. It's not possible.
How old is Arwen?
She is 9 weeks, almost 10 weeks.
Oh,
2 months old. Yeah.
Arwen is beautiful. Thank you for showing her.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for talking to me. I'm going to leave you too, but that was really sweet. Just pop on a Zoom. That's one of the upsides of COVID. Just come on the interview.
Exactly. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I am so glad we did that.
I am too. That was wonderful. It was delightful.
Well, so now I really see why you're an optimist. First of all, thank you. And you're working on this book called Summer Reunion. I want you to pledge right now that you and I can have a summer reunion next summer for the Nantucket Book Festival and At Home with Authors as well.
Yes, I would love that. Absolutely.